Welcome everyone to another panel on World MUN Day. Today we're talking about behind the scenes. What do Secretary Generals do? Now, today we've gathered together a wonderful panel of former Secretary Generals of MUNs. And what we want to do today is just discuss a little bit about what it's like organizing MUNs, how you really get into organizing MUNs, and then sort of best practices and ideas behind it. As of course, many of you listening have participated in these conferences or care about participating in these conferences. These people are usually the figureheads of the conferences, driving them forward, and they're speaking and really working behind the scenes for years to make the experience unforgettable. So first, we're going to do a quick round of introductions where our wonderful panelists are going to introduce where they're based, and we do have from all over the time zones of the world, and a little bit about their MUN experience as well. And then we're going to go forward with a few questions with the debate. So starting just sort of clockwise on my screen, Sharon, do you want to start?
For sure. Hi, y'all. My name's Sharon. In terms of my education, I'm currently a Master's of Global Affairs candidate at the MUNSC School of Global Affairs and Public Policy at the University of Toronto. So currently in Eastern Standard Time. I've been living in Toronto for the last several years, immigrated here from Hong Kong when I was 8. In terms of Model UN experience, so I've participated in a total of 26 conferences, of which I've chaired 14 or 15. And then the rest, I've either been a mix of Secretary General, Director General. I've been a USG a few times. So that means Under Secretary General. So these are kind of the people who are supporting the Secretary General's team. And in terms of like regionality, I had the privilege of chairing NISMUN a few years. So that's in New York. I've also chaired EuroMUN as the head chair, which is in Maastricht in the Netherlands. Was supposed to go to KITMUN and World MUN to chair as well, but unfortunately COVID and whatnot. And then I was also a part of the International Global Network. But again, because of COVID, those conferences unfortunately didn't work out. But yeah, super happy and excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me, Philippe.
Thanks so much, Sharon. Going around the list, Charis.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Good evening from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. I'm Charis Yeap. I am currently a PhD in economics candidate at University Malaya. I am also working for the UK Foreign Common Development Office in Malaysia, based in British High Commission, Kuala Lumpur. My MUN career is short and spicy. It was 5 years throughout the entirety of my university life in London. And I think I'll just mention the most significant part of that would have been my 3-year secretariat involvement with London International Model United Nations. And in 2019, I served as the SecGen for Lyman. Yeah, that's me. Thanks for inviting me.
And last but by no means least, Mariam.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Mariam Monsef. I'm Lebanese and I'm based in Lebanon. And I've been, I did MUN and I am still doing MUN for, I think it's 9 years at this point, ever since I was in high school. I think I've been a SecGen a couple of times. My most notable MUN experience would be in 3 places. It would be NDU MUN, which is my alma mater, so Notre Dame University Al-Waizi MUN, which is a university in Lebanon. And then I was, on the team in a USG at the Future We Want MUN conference, which takes place in New York every year. And I was also really involved with the Rotaract Global MUN. And those are really the main conferences that I've been involved with over the years. Essentially, the one I'm proud of the most is NDU MUN, because it's a really competitive academic MUN in the country. And we were able to, secure funding for the best delegates to be able to get academic scholarships. And so it was really it really is a huge conference in the entire region. And that's basically me and my MUN experience academically or professionally. I'm a mechanical engineer, energy consultant to be exact. And so I deal with solar energy in particular. And that's me.
Fantastic. So we've just proved A, MUN happens everywhere, and B, you don't have to do social sciences to do MUN, which is, of course, a very important note. And maybe a quick intro for me, Philippe, my experience is mostly in Europe, mostly in Germany as well. although now I'm here based in Brussels, in between kind of all of these lovely locations, trying to organise World MUN Day. So let's start by casting our minds back, which is going to be difficult for some people who've been doing it for almost a decade, which Mariam, I am amazed at. I didn't realise you were doing it for so long. What, if you can remember, actually started your MUN? I think we can all say obsession, at least for a short amount of time. What do you think was the first item? So I can at least say for myself, it was, you know, seeing a society at my university. But what kind of kept you going as well? I think, oh, I see everyone really wanted to pounce on this. Maybe Sharon, you seem very engaged there.
Yeah, I can start for sure. So I went to a private high school. I went to University of Toronto Schools, which is a university like high school, I guess. And we organized one of Toronto's largest high school conferences, 800 delegates or so, but it's high school run. And I was in grade 10 and I really wanted to get out of class that day. Love this. And they were looking for pages, as they always are at these conferences. And I was like, okay, yeah, why not? I get to get out of class and I get volunteer hours. It's a win-win. And got into it. And I was sitting there watching debate and like kind of getting into the Model UN vibe. And I actually found it kind of interesting. And my school is very STEM focused. Everyone is going to become a doctor, an engineer, or a lawyer. So Model UN, when I watched it, I was kind of shocked, like, oh, this exists. Like, I don't have to be one of these things. I can maybe consider global affairs as like a actual job option. So fast forward to university. So I did Model UN actually for grade 11 and 12, chaired some conferences, found it super cool, but ended up deciding to go and do my undergrad in medical sciences. So pre-med essentially. And that happened. I hated it, absolutely hated it. But I was still doing Model UN at the time. So I decided to add on political science as a second major. Did super well. Like my average completely changed. Got into global affairs. And yeah, like Model UN, I guess I've been doing for 6 years. So definitely not as long as a decade. But it really, like for me personally, has influenced my career choice. Like I personally, my degree can be used for public or private sector, and Model UN has introduced me to a lot of the public sector stuff, and I became more interested in nonprofit work because of Model UN. But yeah.
Thank you very much, Sharon. Opening up to the other two, any kind of similar themes there as well? I think that's also quite interesting.
Shall I?
Charis, please.
Okay, I think I had a very different experience because I started it in university. It was my first year doing a bachelor in business administration. So I was a finance and marketing major. Also not really in this field. A lot of people thought we were the evil corporate people. I saw this flyer on the campus grounds, and I was like, that looks interesting. It was similar enough to debate, and it had a tagline on it, and it said, calling anybody who wants to do public speaking or debate. And in high school, I was a debater. So I said, you know what, why not? Let's give it a try. I don't know what Model United Nations is, but I think I can guess from the name, Model United Nations. So I came, I sat down, they were like, you are now China. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm China today, I guess. And then I did it. I didn't particularly enjoy it, but I had a group of friends and they all wanted to do it as well. So we said, let's go to one conference. I think it was Cambridge MUN at the time. And I attended, and I didn't say a single word throughout the entire conference as a delegate. And I tell a lot of people this story because they always assume that people who end up going into positions in secretariats are the MUN sharks, or the people who take over the conversations inside the conference, when in reality, I just didn't know what to say. And it was probably because of a lack of preparation, but the first time was not a great experience. But what kept me into it was telling myself, oh, I'm really bad at this and I want to get really, really good at this. And I think that's more of a personality complex than anything. And so I started to sign myself up for more of the conferences from then on, including Lyman, which is what led me into that. And similarly to Sharon, it really molded what I wanted to do with my life, because like I said, I was in business. And because of that, I decided to take a summer school course in LSE to do development studies. And that's where I was introduced to the whole idea of international development as an educational choice. And then from there, I graduated with my degree. I went on to do an MSc in development management at LSE. So similarly enough, I went down that lane, you know. And then in PhD as well, I went into economics. So it was very much driven by that decision. And the work that I do now in the FCDO or with British High Com, I also manage a program that is in low carbon energy. So I look particularly at energy efficiency and green finance. And it's all along the lines of international development. How are we contributing to that, strengthening bilateral ties? How are we improving the development status in each country? So MUN had a huge impact on my life, but it wasn't a smooth start from the beginning. And I have to admit, after I served as SecGen, that was the last time I had involved myself directly in an MUN. So here I am again.
Yeah, it can be quite difficult, I feel like, to sort of continue after those peaks. And now, Mariam, please.
I tell my MUN story every time I get the chance, especially as SecGen and in SecGen speeches. So Philippe knows this very well by now. I was a very outspoken, outgoing child. I used to act, I used to direct plays, I used to, stand up and read poetry at the school assembly. And then one day I messed up at a spelling bee in front of like a huge audience, and I got stage fright for 6 years. And then I moved countries and I came back to Lebanon, and I was giving a presentation. It was for my English class, and I was presenting a book, I think, or something. It was something. And my English teacher fell in love with my public speaking, my style, my communication. And she calls my mom and she tells her, there's this thing, it's called MUN. There was only one MUN conference in the entire country at the time. And she said, you know what, I really think Mariam should sign up. And because my mom asked me to, I couldn't say no. And I hadn't been able to give a single speech in 6 years. I was completely unable to. And the only reason I was able to give a good presentation was because I wanted to get a scholarship to go to university. That was like, and if I get good grades, then I'm going to get to go to a good university. And that was really the process in my mind. So when my mom told me I had to join MUN, I joined MUN. And it sucked. I stood up on the podium for my first speech, and I look at the chairs and I look at the delegates and I'm like, honorable chairs, and I look at the chairs and I say, fellow delegates. And I just blank. That's all I remember from that entire experience. And then the whole thing just sucked. But here's the thing. The way they pulled you into that conference was by saying, if you win, you get a chance to go to a conference in New York. I am Lebanese. I am from the Middle East. We reach out and grab every single opportunity we can. Even though I had been to Canada before and I had traveled, New York, it sounded so wonderful, so amazing. So I tried again the year after that and I lost. And then I tried again the year after that and I lost. I sucked, right? But I just kept going. And then I got to university and I had given up. So I always wanted to be a political scientist in the most simplest of terms. And then I discovered mechanical engineering and I invented something in the country and I decided to go for that. And then in my first year, a group of people came up to me and they said, we heard you did MUN at some point in your life. Or I think, no, there was like a call. And then I impressed them with like what little experience I had back then. And I just joined this group of people and we co-founded MUN, and it was like a snowball effect. Just one conference led to another. And now all of a sudden there was this competing conference. So it went from having one conference in the country to two, and just, it has this really big effect in our really small community. So what kept me going was, I think, something similar to Charis, but also my story has, a little bit like Sharon, but in the opposite, from, arts to sciences. That's it.
Fantastic. I mean, we've fallen in love with you now with the story as well. So it's definitely a very effective one. So all of you, of course, kept going after your first one. I mean, the average number of MUNs, not to forget, is one for the person to do. So what, is the most positive aspect of MUN for you? Now, this is something we get a lot of in MUN interviews as well, when you're interviewing as a chair or something, but not in more of an interview kind of way, in a more general way. Like, what is the benefit, the positive part of it? and then we'll move a little bit into more about how you can organize that positive part. Maybe I'll try and reverse. Mariam, I feel like we're all desperate to hear you again.
This is going to sound so cheesy, but friendship, like the friends. I was so lonely in high school. Lebanon is a volatile situation. Let's just say I belonged to a certain group of people and I was in a community of a different group of people, so I was rejected. And we have a lot of issues locally, but when I went to MUN, I met so many people and I made so many friends. And all of a sudden I went from, having no plans on the weekend and not going out to lunch to having people who I can go out with. And I think just that the fact that there was a community now that I belonged to, that there was a group of people, like-minded individuals that I can relate to. The one positive thing that impacted me on a professional level was I was now able to give speeches again, and I was able to communicate again. And so it helped me develop myself, but also it helped me belong. And that's very important for young adults and teenagers. You need to find you need to have friends around you. You need to have a safe space and a group of people. And I found that in MUN. And I still find it in every conference I go to. So.
So Sharon, anything you want to add on to that? I think that's something we all definitely feel. Very well put. Thank you very much, Mariam. But love to hear from you as well if there's anything more.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, first things first, like my current partner who I've been with for the last 3.5 years, we actually met through MUN. So on a personal level, so he was actually the president of our university chapter. And I was a small, I think I was just a delegate. Yeah, I wasn't even on exec. And yeah, we were living together for the last several years. I moved cities, long story. But on a very personal level, echoing what Mariam said, so many of my closest friends are from Model UN. I blatantly never get to see them because they're not in the same country or their schedules are different and we're not in the same city. But it's amazing the level of connection I have with these people, considering I met them once for a period of 5 days, maybe in another country. And it boggles my mind. I think literally yesterday, one of the delegates that I chaired for World MUN back in 2018 reached out to me on Messenger and was just like, hey, how's it going? And it's just these small little moments. I personally also didn't have the closest friend group in high school. Everyone was super competitive, being kind of a university feeder school, very toxic atmosphere. Everyone was just kind of, imagine networking from the age of grade 9. That was my school environment, which is not healthy at all, right? So Model UN kids for me were they were so chill. Why are they so nice? It was such a great experience. In terms of professionally, definitely the fact that I can say I've gone to so many conferences and chaired so many things, and you can pull in the teamwork, communication, organization, keywords here. But definitely I think it impacted how I was able to get my internship at the US Consulate in Toronto. I was also a youth assembly delegate in 2019. And yeah, love Model UN.
Charis, anything more? Anything more to add, please?
Sure. Obviously, I also made a lot of good friends from MUN, that's evident. But I just want to move away a bit from the friendships and go more towards just being surrounded by people who are passionate about the same things. And it's not even about necessarily building this lifelong friendship with them, rather than just knowing that there are other people out there who want to do good in the world. And I think that was really difficult for me to find, having been in a private business school. And everyone around me was telling me how they wanted to go to a Big Four consulting firm. And for some reason, it just felt like I was going against the grain by saying, but I want to save the earth rather than destroy it. And it just felt weird. I always felt a bit wrong about it. And it guilted me a little bit that I was in this business school where everyone else was doing political science, everyone else was doing these amazing, innovative things that they knew would have a huge impact on the world. And so going into MUN, being surrounded by people who were so passionate about the same things and who knew what they wanted their impact to be later on. And it wasn't everyone, fine. Maybe not everyone goes into MUN with the idea of, I want to change the world, but there is eventually going to be a group of people that stick it through most of these conferences. And when they're attending, they're hoping that beyond just 3 days, 5 days conferences, they're going to come out of there and do something meaningful with it. And the amount of times where, especially when I was SG, the amount of times where I had to ask myself, how can we make MUN more substantive? How can we make it more meaningful? How can we make it have an impact on real life? And that was kind of what drove me throughout the year I was SG at Lyman, trying to find a real purpose for what we do at MUN, rather than it just being us congregating as students and talking about these important topics. So technically, learned a lot, huge knowledge building opportunity without having to feel like I was forced to do it, right? I was doing it because I wanted to do it. And at the same time, you're meeting a bunch of people that are probably going to go on and do amazing things. And now I look back, since the last MUN I did was in 2019, now I look back at people I've met there, I've chaired there, I've delegated with, and I see the incredible things that they've achieved since then. And it's really impressive, and it's heartwarming, and it makes you feel like you're doing something worthwhile.
Thank you. No, perfect. Thanks very much. No, and I mean, you also move very much into what I want to talk next to, which is the SecGen's role in creating that positive experience. So without going straight away into that question, one thing I think we don't realize enough is the fact that the role of a Secretary General is very different everywhere. Of course, at the UN, the Secretary General changes every single SecGen. Even in the UN Charter, the definition of Secretary General is left pretty open. So before we go maybe specifically into it, what does a Secretary General do, in your opinion, in sort of quite short words? And then I'd love to go into a bit more about, how can a SecGen develop those positive experiences? Charis, are you happy to jump straight back in on that?
Sure. In as simple terms as possible, I think a SecGen just serves as the best leader possible for a conference. And they might not necessarily become the best leader, but they're trying to emulate being a best leader. And they're part-time CEO, part-time civil servant, part-time diplomat, part-time everything, and all things at once. They are the face and the butt of the conference. That's what I would say SG is.
I love the face and the butt of the conference, yeah. Sharon and Mariam, who wants to jump in next?
I mean, I can jump in just briefly. I really think like the SecGen is the person who ultimately is responsible for the conference. That's how I like to frame it. So like, if you as a SecGen don't take personal responsibility, it is very highly likely that your conference will not succeed. Yes, you're leading a team and having to work on the team, but if your team isn't as on board as you are, the conference is, for lack of a better term, going to go to shit. Like it's going to fall, it's going to fail, and it's going to fail epically. I mean, but also like a SecGen should also be a friend. Like I hate to see SecGens who are so alienated from their staff just because they're at the top of the quote unquote like ladder. Like as a SecGen, you should be communicating with your pages, like maybe not directly organizing them, but you should know the names of everyone on your staff. Like it shouldn't be the day of the conference where you come up to someone and you're like, oh my God, I didn't even know you were working for me. Like, well, sorry, not working for me, working with me. But it's also about creating that sense of connection and team building within your team, not just leading, I guess, the charge.
Very good point. Thanks, Sharon. Mariam?
So I'm glad I got to speak last, because I was going to start off by saying a SecGen does everything, but then I was listening to Sharon and Charis, and I realized there's one important thing to note, that, like you said in the beginning, a SecGen is different everywhere. I've never been the same SecGen, and I've been a SecGen on multiple conferences, and I've been a different person, and I've had different tasks and duties in every single one of them. But one thing that's important to note is that I've done everything. I was an usher or a page. I used to sit and take registrations. I would guide students from the bus to their rooms. I did everything as SecGen, and that's just, the logistics stuff that I'm talking about. I would put the papers and I would organize the delegate packages, and I would stay up until 11 with the team doing that. But I also was the person who was sending out the official emails to secure funding, and I was also the person holding the staff meetings and making sure that everything was running smoothly. I was proofreading all of the guides, and I was also reading not all, because at that point it would have been disastrous, but at least 20% of the position papers that came in. As a SecGen, I did everything. There was nothing that I couldn't do. And I think that it's so important to know that a SecGen is not just the person who is, in Arabic we have a word for it, but I don't know what the literal and direct translation for it is, but you're not just the person who sits and gives orders. You work and you do. And that's the only way your conference is going to succeed, because if you don't do that, I mean, you're fucked and your conference is fucked. So it's not just, giving orders and giving directions, but also doing them yourself. And that's, I think, to me, that was what a SecGen was, and that was the only way it had to be for it to be successful.
Yeah. Any feedback between the three of you actually on sort of what the other said? Because you all said something different, which is obviously what I was getting at the beginning here. And obviously, for example, my experience, we had a separate organizing team as well as myself being SecGen. So I didn't actually handle most of the organization. It was mostly with the diocese itself. Is it a good thing, in your opinion, that SecGens are so different everywhere? Or should there be sort of more of almost a guide for SecGens everywhere?
It's a wonderful thing. It's amazing. Because the role of a SecGen, I'm sorry I jumped in so quickly, but the role of a SecGen is, in different parts of the world, shaped by the local culture a lot of the times. So you can really see what a local leader is like in the eyes of that community. And I was able to see, what a SecGen, what a leader is, just as a leader is in almost every continent on the world. And so it's really interesting, because, I mean, the definition of SecGen and their roles and responsibilities should change, because it gives you like this, it adds flavor to the entire experience. If you had a book of, a SecGen should do 1, 2, 3, then there's really no room for innovation. And MUN is an academic experience, and it needs to be open for innovation. So that's my opinion on that.
I think, Charis, did you want to jump in there? Or
Sure. You're right. We didn't give the same answer, but I think there were a lot of similar threads throughout them. I think what Mariam said, being all parts of the conference, right? And SG, to me, what makes the best SG, or what makes a good one, would be someone who puts the experience first. So, and the only way you can do that is by knowing how it feels like to be in everyone's shoes. If you don't know what it feels like to be delegate, how would you know what would be an enjoyable delegate experience, right? So I completely agree with that. And being different types of SGs in different settings, we don't even have to look at all the countries or all the different conferences. I can just look at MUN itself. Every MUN SecGen has been different from the one before. And anyone who has been to MUN can tell you that, because we've all done it our own way. And MUN's different from other conferences because we are not just one conference. We are a registered charitable organization. So we are obligated to have financial scrutiny. We are obligated to report to a board of trustees. We are obligated to do these things. So it's beyond just running a conference. It's also being accountable. It's being held responsible for the decisions that you're making. It's being the face of an actual organization. So within MUN's 22 SecGens so far, none of us have been the same. Like, we all have our own style, but the only thing that remained the same throughout all of us was that we had a vision, like one great vision, that we wanted to ensure that there was continuity with how MUN as an organization would function. We had a great team, and it's a team that we had the freedom to shape ourselves. No matter the size, the nationality, the universities, we could decide who our team was going to be, and we could choose whether or not it was based on competency or whether it was based on whatever else, right? And then the last thing would have been how you execute it. That's it. That's the only three things that were similar between all the different SGs. And I think it really shapes the experience, because each time you go to a conference, it's going to be different from the one before, or it's going to be different from another conference that you've been to. And that's largely in part the role of the SG. You're trying to shape what the whole experience is going to feel like throughout the weekend or throughout the 5 days.
Very good point. And yeah, Lyman's a very special experience of that as well with the trustees. Sharon, anything you want to add?
I think one important thing we haven't really touched upon is scale. And with a conference as big as MUN, I have no idea how your logistics goes down. Personally, like, as I've been a part of NISMUN, which is 7,000 delegates over the course of 2 sessions.
That's
So
quite a few. It's quite a few, I'd say.
I think that's comparable by scale, but I've also done conferences where it's like 80 people online.
Yeah.
Right? So it's really evident kind of the needs change and therefore your team changes, right? Like with a conference as big as NISMUN, we had it like our division and staff is entirely administrative versus substantive. And there are 2 people in charge of the conference, but they're both in charge of both sessions. So in that case, right, you kind of need a secretary general who might be more focused on the logistics and organizing staff, who might not be in touch with the rest of staff as much just because there's only 24 hours in a day, right? Whereas with a secretary general of a smaller conference, it's almost like startup culture. They have to be involved in every stage. They have to make sure they can do every role, because if someone doesn't know their job, they have to step in. But even with big conferences, that happens all the time. It's just almost like you have to assign someone to address that problem, and then you go put out the next fire. I remember, at least for NISMUN, one of our biggest issues is we had staffers patrolling the hotel hallways instead of paying security guards to do it. So imagine all of us chairs, right? We've done a full day of chairing and it's 8 p.m. and we have a shift until 12 a.m. patrolling hallways. You can imagine how that went down with staff. And it actually is a practice that continues to this day. And as Secretary General, they have to stay up until the latest shift, which is, I think, 12 to 2:30 a.m. And conference starts the next day at 9 a.m. sessions, right? So it really depends, I think, on the conference needs and like the scale and scope of what you're trying to achieve.
I think the sleepless times at a conference is something people really underestimate. You really only get a few hours kind of in between them. And something I think all of you mentioned that I want to really focus on now is team. Because one of the things the SecGen does, perhaps one of the most important things at the beginning, is recruit a team. Maybe it's different. Perhaps you're working with the president of association. Perhaps sometimes the team is hired at the same time as you. But as SecGen, you are at least managing the team and at least hiring the dais or other parts of it. So I want maybe tips in this sense, more than just your own experience. How did you find managing or hiring the team that was around you, your USGs as it were? And was there anything you wish you did better? Because one of the problems I think I find with my own experience is it happens so quickly at the beginning. There's almost not enough time to reflect on the people who really you're working with for the next year. Now, Sharon, you smiled at that. I saw a bit of laughter almost. Maybe it's a personal experience of yours. So I think I want to immediately head back to you to see what that's about.
So I have done a lot of recruiting for a lot of different things. So currently I am a student partner for a consulting firm, so I do recruiting there as well. I've done recruiting in the Model UN context for too many conferences, especially last minute ones where a chair drops out and you have to desperately search on Facebook Model UN groups. Hey, you seem like you have experience. You want to come chair a virtual conference? But really, like, one of the biggest blessings, I guess, of COVID, for lack of a better term, is the ability to connect internationally and draw from an international pool of candidates. Like just having access to social capital and, like, for example, like Charis is in Malaysia, right? Like the fact that we're on a call together talking about Model UN and I perfectly understand her experience, it's just like one of those things where because of the internet, we're able to connect and have so many different international staffers that provide so many different perspectives and different flavors to world issues we're discussing, right? This is, in order to discuss world issues, it makes most sense to discuss it with a diverse audience. And that, in my opinion, is what most conferences also do focus on, like the international aspect of trying to draw, more students. At least with the conferences I've been a part of, the plan is always to expand. No conference I've ever been a part of was like, hey, we want to stick with the exact number of delegates we had last year. Every conference is like, next year, let's get more people. Let's make more money. Let's get more people. Let's get more funding. And that, of course, is entirely impossible without a solid team that you recruit who is as committed as you. And usually, if not always, they come from different places all around the world, and you just got to find them.
Agree. I'm torn on who to call to next, because Mariam, I want to go to you. But Charis, I noticed the chin scratching there. Lima has a different experience, I think, with numbers of delegates. Mariam, please. Oh, Charis, do you want to?
Oh, no, please, Mariam, please.
Mariam, please, yeah.
Okay, so
I love every conversation that Mariam starts with "so," and then
so I've had very different recruiting experiences, because if we want to talk about recruiting in Lebanon, the MUN community here is tiny. There's one conference, one opportunity, and you need to be able to, most of the times at the time, it was like, if you don't go to a private school, more or less, you don't have access to an MUN conference. So there's that aspect. So if you are, in terms of tips and tricks, if you are like me in a community with not a lot of MUNers, the thing I reflected on, the thing I learned the most was that don't close off to recruiting people who are not MUNers. You can always recruit non-MUNers to be on your team, but I'm not talking about chairs, for example, or like your USG of academics. But if you need someone to do your PR or someone to handle social media, you can always recruit someone who is passionate and committed and wants to learn and is interested in it. We should always make sure that everyone knows what an MUN conference is. So at the very least, that's what you have to do. And so what I used to do is I would run a mock MUN conference, which was a day-long conference for the entire staff. So my entire team, pages, ushers, the photographers, everyone had to attend this one-day conference. And so by the end of the day, they'd have a conference under their belt, and they would get a delegate's position. And so that way they know what they're talking about, and they know what the delegate experience is, and they can build towards that. So that was something I did for a small MUN community where it was so incredibly difficult to find MUNers to join the team. But I did recruiting as a USG. So I did recruiting for Future We Want, for example. And on that level, it's different because you have this huge pool of applicants, and they're all, a lot of them are super qualified, and they're really smart and outgoing, and they're go-getters. And what I did in those situations is I never handled it on my own. I would always head into an interview with someone else by my side, because I needed a fresh perspective to eliminate bias. And every time a person from my network applied to a position that I was doing recruitment for, I would eliminate myself from the decision-making procedure so that I make sure that everyone who gets on board is the right person in the right place. So you need to make sure you have the right person in the right position, and they won't flake on you, especially in an international conference, because guys, it's so hard flying all the way to New York and finding out your chair did not leave their country of origin. And it has happened before. And I had to find a substitute chair in New York. Hell, I'm not even from anywhere near that area. I don't have a network in that area. So make sure you pick committed people who won't flake on you, and you can gauge, you can just tell. It's not just about how many conferences they have under their belt. It's about how committed and passionate they are. And that kind of thing is so hard to fake. So I've given, a small conference example and a big conference example, and then there's the online one. I'm not going to repeat what was already said. If you have an opportunity to recruit people from around the world, do it. There are Facebook groups. You can go on Twitter and post a tweet. Just one Instagram story, I guarantee will be, if someone who's not into MUN knows someone who's into MUN, they're going to share that story to their MUN loving friend, because that's how people see MUNers, as an MUNer for like ever. So that's really how it goes. And so these are my tips and tricks for recruitment on 3 levels.
Amazing. Thank you. Charis, please.
I love that. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Where do I start though, Philippe? Where do
How do you follow up after that?
No, where do I start? There's just so much to it, right? A team, the idea of a team. Maybe I'll go back to why I was laughing a little bit just now when Sharon mentioned, she's never heard of a conference that's ultimate goal is not to expand, right? And I think Lyman is just it's just an odd entity. And in the UK circuit, it's the old beast, you know, that's what everyone calls it, an old traditional beast. And I don't like that term because I'm always trying to find ways to make it more innovative, but it's true, we're old, and the downfalls of being old is capacity, right? And we never intended for it to go beyond 2,000 participants a year, any year. And that's strictly due to venue capacity. So that's why I was laughing. Because if we were to go beyond that, there is no venue that can feasibly fit all these people anymore in London. It's just impossible. So that's why I was laughing. Okay, team-wise though, I really like what you guys said. And you know, I totally echo everything that you've said there. But I have one more point to make, which is MUN people come from different types of academic backgrounds. I am a business student, you know, you're in STEM, you're half in STEM, half in arts, you know, you have those expertise of your own. And having had a marketing major and a finance major, when I first applied for a secretariat position in Lyman 2017, I applied in Lyman 2016 and I got rejected. But in 2017, I wanted to be USG comms. So I wanted to do communication, social media, that kind of stuff, because it was what I was into. And the SG at the time said, you'd be a perfect USG finance. And I was distraught, but I took it because I thought, you know what, it's something I can easily do. I just didn't want to do it because I didn't feel like it was challenging. So I took it. And then that's when my time with Lyman as a secretariat member began, right? And what I'm trying to say is that sometimes it's not just about that one person. It's not how good are you at that one job. It's also about how is this team of 10, 12, 20 people going to work together? And the first person you choose, or at least for us, the first person that we chose was the SG, right? So we have an elections with the trustees, with the former secretariat members, and we have to put in votes for these people that we've been working with for the last year to decide who would be the next SG. It was competitive, it was bureaucratic, it was fair. And I think it was, you know, it's not ideal because obviously people are going to be disappointed, but that's where you see who's going to be passionate, who's going to have the best ideas. And you know that this is going to be someone who wants to do something great. And then the second person you choose is your DSG, and they give you free reign to choose whoever that is going to be. And just like what Mariam said, you cannot choose people alone. You are going to be inherently biased. There's no way you're going to escape that bias. And by having a DSG that shares your vision, but has a complementary set of skills, I'm going to drop names, sorry, but like the Charis Yeap Diana, the Nusrat Charis, you know, it has to be complementary. And you have to know that they bring something to the table that you know you lack. And that's another solid skill that an SG has to have. You have to be so self-aware about your strengths, about your weaknesses, and how someone can make up for those. And then gathering that team together, knowing what you can do if you were to step in and what you can't do if nobody was able to step in for it. And I say this because, for example, if a USG finance were to drop out last minute, I wouldn't feel the pressure as much as if the USG, I don't know, applications were to drop out. Because how am I going to manage all those applications when I'm busy running a conference? But finance, that's already part of my job. So it's about figuring out the dynamics within that team. Who's going to get along with who? What role would this person better be suited for? And whether or not will they understand why they've been chosen for that? And there have been times where I've explicitly told friends who have applied for positions in secretariat that, hey, I know you want this job, but I really do think you'd excel somewhere else. And because I have someone else who would be the perfect fit for this one. So a team is more than just, you know, high and mighty SG calling all their disciples in to take your seats at the table. No, it's be humble. You're going to spend the next 1 year seeing this face, giving you some, maybe not some nice feedback sometimes. And we're going to have to still be a team at the end of it. And fair enough, some people don't make it all the way to the end. But what's important is that, you know, that initial initiative is there. You have to have a shared purpose, and then you go forward from there.
We are sadly running out of time. I think we're in the last 10 minutes now. And what I really want to focus on this last 10 minutes is kind of that future, or, you know, kind of what's left in MUN. So what the question is what did you not manage to do in your roles as SecGen, or maybe something you reflect on afterwards that you really think should be introduced to MUN, should be more of a focus in future MUNs? And sorry, if you look at my guitar there, please ignore that. Why don't we start with Mariam this time and do sort of a final, and then there'll be times for small final comments And yeah.
So this is not an original idea, but I saw this taking place at the most recent MUN or something that I was a part of, and they used to do this pre-COVID, and it kind of, so every time I finished the conference, I would still feel like there's something missing. Like, surely it can't end here, because of course there's no doubt in my mind that we have changed the lives of hundreds, if not thousands of students across the world. That's for sure. Any student who successfully completes MUN and leaves that happy is a student whose life has changed, even if in ways they don't know yet. But surely if we are exposed to this many, to hundreds of thousands of students who are this passionate and have this drive, and if it just ends after an MUN conference, then surely there's something that we can be doing. And this was a thought that was nagging me so much, because you have all this, you have this power that you can mobilize, that you can use. And then I saw this MUN conference. I'm not sure if I should name it or not, so I'm just going to refrain from doing that. But what they would do is, their conference is not just Model UN. Their conference also includes, it's a program. It's not like a 3-day thing. It's a program. It's a week to week long affair. And it also includes building houses and, meetings with local governmental entities and debating on issues that the local country is facing. And they form like youth coalitions that get to give their opinions on upcoming laws or issues that are on the table. And so this conference gives way for their delegates to become actual change makers in their communities. So your MUN journey, and then when you're done with MUN, you're not really done, because what you have to do after that is you have to report to the local partners, and it transforms into some kind of like internship / volunteer work. You've got this opportunity to continue doing what you were debating in your Model UN conference. And so this entire experience made me realize, I wish I did that. I wish I was as innovative as these people, or because this was literally, I think, the last conference I was a part of. And so moving forward, if I ever do MUN again, because I'm not sure at this point, then this would be something I would try to incorporate at least, which is continuity, and not just Model UN continuity, but just actual tangible work continuity. That is something that I would do. And that is one thing that just kind of finally made me feel at peace. Like, now I know why I was feeling so empty all this time.
Perfect. Sharon, I'm aware you might have to leave soon, so I want to give you the floor next.
I honestly don't have much to add. Very interesting listening to Miriam's perspective on this.
Charis, anything that maybe you wish you could incorporate more or believe outside of MUN should be done?
Yes, 100% yes. And I said this just now.
Yep.
I am so tired of people saying that MUN is just a bunch of nerds coming together to talk about stuff and then forgetting about it afterwards. I'm sick of people looking at my photo and saying, you look like an MUN person. What does that mean? Is that negative? Should it be negative? No. So I'm going to come in and say this. When I was SG, I was obsessed with this idea. And to hear Mariam's example of that, I'm really happy someone's doing it in a different format. But I was obsessed with this idea, and I called it the Lyman Social Project or something like that.
Yes, I remember that.
And the idea was it would have been a 3-day accelerator program for social enterprises started by MUNers. And people would come in. So instead of a position paper, they would be writing a business proposal. And the idea is to put in these business proposals. And then in these 3 days, they work to improve these ideas and turn them into an actual startup, a social enterprise. And we as a Lyman network would try to help get them to network, would try to help get them find funding. We would do all these things to make sure that we could say, this is a Lyman supported project. This is a Lyman supported social enterprise. And we can say that, look, MUNers are doing things, not necessarily through, traditional policy channels. It can be through social enterprise. And I was really, really, confident about this idea. And obviously it was the first time, so it didn't go perfectly. And then the next time around, this whole obsession with COVID, so things were falling apart. But if I had the chance, which maybe I might in the future, to tell them to do something like that again, or to do something like that better, oh, I would definitely do it. Can you imagine having an accelerator program for social enterprises that are linked to Model UN? That would be amazing. So that's one, and I'm still obsessed with it. The other thing, I don't know if I'm allowed to say the name of this other, is it taboo? Model ASIM, Asia-Europe meeting. So
yes.
yeah. So in 2019, after I left MUN, I said, I don't want to do this anymore. And suddenly my university goes, oh, we've been asked to send a representative to join this conference. And they were like, only 2 from the whole country is going, try it out. So I was selected. I was sent to Spain for 1 week to do this amazing Model ASIM conference, similar to MUN, very similar, but they had some real proper structure in there. And you know, it's because it's being organized by ASIF itself, so the Asia-Europe organization. So it was them who were pioneering this idea of bringing in the youth, getting them involved, and then making them shape this youth document that would go on and be read to an Asia-Europe ministers meeting. So they were doing these things that would eventually end up channeling youth opinions and youth voices and youth advocacy into an actual policy platform. And I thought, man, MUN can easily do that. We could easily go up to any kind of policy making body and say, hey, let's just give us 5 minutes to read this thing out. And trust me, you're going to be blown away by how amazing all these young people are. And if we just, I don't know, maybe it's about initiative, but if a conference would want to do that, I think it would create like a shift in all of MUN. It would make it something much more meaningful beyond just 3 days of making friends and hanging out.
Amazing. Well, thank you, all of you. It's been utterly incredible to talk to you, all of your wonderful experience, all of your ideas, and I hope some of these ideas maybe get pushed beyond World MUN Day. I want to give you just 30 seconds, any quick shout outs or reflections maybe on your time in MUN. I'll just do sort of, Sharon, Charis, Mariam, so we can just give you a chance to say whatever you want to say really about this. Sharon?
I would say we need to get more non-poli-sci people in MUN. Like there are so many, like at least in North America, like the North American circuit, 75% of everyone who's in MUN is either high on poli-sci or sociology or business administration or something like that. But what about science? What about engineering? Like these people have so much to contribute to the conversation, especially when it comes to committees on sustainability, climate change, like even like food programs, agriculture. There's so much that can be done. And like their opinion would be so interesting to listen to. And in this day and age where the job market is so competitive, it really, I think, would like Model UN as an opportunity to develop their public speaking and their presentation skills, especially because, their actual university career and academic education might not offer opportunities like this. Like Model UN could really, really help them out professionally. And we just have to deliver that to them, for lack of a better term. And because Model UN is a community, right? If someone in your friend group is not doing Model UN, you're so much less inclined to do it, to be fair. But it was an absolute pleasure. I'm going to hop off now. Mariam, Charis, Philippe, it was great being here today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
All right, take care.
Bye. Charis, I'll give over to you now. Final comments, final thoughts.
30 seconds.
No pressure, not 30 seconds, it's however long, but.
Okay, my call to action in 30 seconds.
Call to action, exactly.
It would be, let's have more conversations like this. And a lot of people try to disassociate themselves from MUN after they leave because they think it's just a stepping stone to do something that they want to do afterwards. It looks good on a CV. When in reality, you're building a network, you're building, so much, it's a knowledge hub. And if you can actually foster these conversations and say, what do we need to do to make this better? Instead of looking at another conference and saying, that's my competitor, they're stealing my delegates. And instead thinking, what are they doing that we can learn from them? What are we doing they can learn from us? And what can we do together maybe? Then I think MUN would become a much more meaningful activity. I don't have to spend any time thanking MUN for what it's done to my life. I think it's quite evident that I am a product of Model UN. I'm a product of the success that comes with, devoting yourself into an activity that's meaningful and positive for the world. So thanks for this, Philippe.
Thank you very much. Mariam? last but by no means least, the storyteller, the poet herself.
I think we need more people to have an open mind, and we need to have an open mind. We need to have a more open mind ourselves. We need to contribute to that narrative, because MUN is, at least for a couple of years in your life, if you get into it, is a lifestyle. And at some point, people just either, there are two perspectives here. I mean, I think Charis, touched on that a little bit, which is people look at you and they're like, oh, you're an MUNer, you're a nerd, you look like an MUNer, you're posing like an MUNer. I heard that so many times, but then there are also people who I see have the capacity to become MUNers, would be fantastic MUNers, who MUN would do wonders for them. And they're not in that community because they don't have enough of an open mind. And they don't have enough of an open mind because I think it goes both ways, honestly. I think the MUN community needs to embrace more people. Not that it's not, but okay, if we're talking about fuel versus friction, I think what the MUN community does a lot of the time is it fuels MUN. Join MUN, it's good on your CV. You'll learn public speaking, you'll get to network. That's what we say. That's how we pitch it. Rather, we should be focusing on eliminating the friction that's stopping people from joining MUN, or at least experiencing it. And there could be so many sources of friction. It could be embarrassment. So, okay, why are you embarrassed of being an MUNer? Let's work on that. It could be it could be that in some parts of the world, MUN might be expensive. Let's work on that. So I think we as an MUN community should work on, keep the fuel, it's there, but sometimes people are already sold on MUN. There's just friction there forbidding them from getting into it. But then also, and it's not really their fault, but non-MUNers who look down on the MUN community, I think that just requires conversations at a younger age, when students are in school, for them to really understand that MUN, it's not this, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's not this nerdy thing you have in your head. It's not uncool for whatever reason you think it's uncool for. So yeah, that would be my final reflection point. I think as an MUN community, we can move forward and help more people, benefit from it.
Well, this has really been, I think, one of the best conversations I've ever had on kind of MUN like this. So for that, I've really got to give huge thanks to, obviously, Sharon, who just left, Charis, Mariam, and for everyone watching. I genuinely am hopeful that this does become a bit more of a debate, something we can replicate more often, more than just World MUN Day. But I'm glad at least we start from this. And that, much as Charis said, these conversations happen after people have left MUN. Because you're very right. It's too easy to just go on and leave it behind. So thank you again. It's also great having people from all over the world coming to join this panel and watching. Do make sure to follow the rest of our panels today on World MUN Day, one other being hosted by Sharon and others being organized. We hope you have a wonderful rest of the day, and we hope you will hear more from us about these topics, about shaping MUN, about just trying to improve these important things that really help shape us into the human we are today. Thank you very much.